Okay, now let's invite her into the chat. Okay, and now we wait. Hey, Matea. And there she is. Hey,
Hello, Lily.
how are you?
I'm excellent. Happy Valentine's.
Same. Happy Valentine's Day. And I'm spending it here with you. I couldn't be happier. It's
So
amazing.
lovely. I'm sorry I didn't bring a flower.
Oh, I can only give you some water.
Same here.
Ah, I'm so grateful to have you here today. And thank you so much for everyone that's already joined on the live stream. Honestly, we appreciate that it's Valentine's Day and you guys may have plans. So thank you so much for joining us. It's truly amazing. But yeah, so I'll get on with a very small presentation of what we're doing here today, and then I'll give you the floor so you can present yourself, because I always think things are better when they come from someone's own words. Um, I'm just starting my online tour. That's fine. Thank you, Matea. See you soon. Okay, well, for those of you who don't know who am I or what we're doing here, my name is Lily. I am the CEO of Travolution Tours, and this is a company that is really focused on bringing tourism closer to people in a way that is sustainable, affordable, and accessible, which is not something all guides are always very good at doing, but is very necessary. And in order to do this, I've decided to bring on board my friend tour guides from all over the world to give you an insight as to what it actually takes to be a tour guide and how hard our profession can be sometimes. Because I think a lot of times people think, oh, it's just easy talking around to people, whatever. But there is a lot of work that goes into it. And that's why people are joining in. And we are now on episode number 6. And we are returning back to Europe, because I believe you're back in Europe now, are you?
Exactly. I'm back to Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Excellent. Excellent, because just a few weeks ago she was in Cuba, and this would have been a much more difficult conversation. So I am going to let her introduce herself for you guys, in case you don't know her. So over to you.
Okay, I'm really excited to be here. It's not that I get an opportunity to talk to another tour guide every day, which I
Well,
don't, and it's really exceptional for me also. I've just returned from overseas, so I'm still a bit on jet lag. So excuse me if I'll be like, oh, since you were talking of the hardship of this profession, that's one of them for me. But I'm the owner of Elegant Cultural Tours, tours of boutique content. We travel for culture in small groups, up to 15 people mostly, 15 guests. But I've been in this profession for more than, oh my God, 20 years. It may not look like that, but it's been a long time. And I can still say that I love this job. It's just something I adore.
I mean, this is something that I always get from all your content and all your posts, that you sincerely appreciate everything that you say, everywhere that you go. Everything is special, which is very hard to make everything special.
Yeah, I
It's,
agree with you. I'm so happy that you could see it through the posts. Maybe what helps is the fact that we're doing different destinations. The tourism jargon now coming up, different countries. In which way it's like it's never very repetitive where I'm going to. So maybe that helps a lot.
yes, and I wanted to ask you about that as well. But to begin with, and just so people understand why you've been doing this for such a long time and what drives you, why did you decide to start Elegant Cultural Tours? Like, you woke up one day and you thought, you know what, I'm gonna be a tour guide. How did that happen?
No, that would have been a story for a movie, but it wasn't like that. It was going on through years and years of self-exploring. I was trying to figure out what of the things that I've been doing already back then are really something that I love doing, and which parts of the tours or destinations or somehow interactions with the local people I don't really appreciate so much. So it actually grew through years and years of exploring, writing down. Even I'm like this nerd, writing down everything I love and then trying to connect the dots. And I think I fairly succeeded now in this Elegant Cultural Tours. Is actually most of the things that I love about the world and interactions with guests and the local people. It's so nice.
but it's generally a journey of a lifetime, right? Which is what not a lot of people understand. That, I mean, some people, like our colleague Raquel in Seville, she wholeheartedly believes she was born to be a tour guide because she always felt that, and that's great. But not everyone ends up just with the magical words in their head one day, and so it can be a journey. And like you said, finding what works for you as a tour guide can be challenging. Like, not all of us want to do the same destinations, the same places, the same topics. I have friends in India that are tour guides for trekking, and other tour guides in, I don't know, Colombia, which are just doing food tourism. So it's a very varied world, and I think it needs to be acknowledged that there is actually a lot to the profession. So there you go. Thank you so much for giving us that insight. Because
yeah, I also love the way you think. I also noticed the same. I believe personally that we have to find our niche. Those words, the big words. But in a way, this is the only way for me, at least, to really bring the best of myself. I can't be a trekking guide, for example, but I can show art and beauty and share this with the people and connect on a heartfelt level with them in these topics.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's you cannot be a one size fits all, and I think when tour guides try to do that, things fall apart a little bit. But yeah, so on that topic, and on the topic that you go literally to so many different places, how did you achieve like this? Like, how did you come to the realization, you know what, I want to be in Cuba 1 month and in Morocco the other one, and why those locations? Because the world is such a big place, and to begin with, I think one of the first tours of you or of the stuff that you posted were the one that goes from Ljubljana to Vienna and whatnot, and I thought, okay, it makes sense, those cities are connected, I get it. And then I was like, Morocco and Cuba, wow, like how did we go from one to the other? Like, why did you decide it on those ones?
Yeah, and there's even more. I also go to China and Turkey, which we don't offer yet, but we are hopefully gonna do that. Well, it is actually one of the questions I get on my tours a lot, especially because it's so diverse. I've been thinking a lot about this. Somehow I would see myself as a very dual person. In a way, I adore Europe and everything connected to Europe. So I connect really nicely to the cultures that are still close to Europe, but maybe not in all the ways European. Of course, my hometown, that's an easy one. Vienna, Venice, I adore them. Lots of art there. But in a way, Morocco is distant enough to be very interesting to me, and close enough for me to be able to go in depth and understand them through art, through music, through the connections to Europe. And I'd say the same for Cuba. It's been very Spanish throughout the whole colonial period. And this, in my heart, it really opens my heart, just to see this roots of the art and then going into what's happening to it now. It's just fantastically interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with you, because I sort of do something similar, not to the same extent that you do, but obviously I hold tours in the UK, I hold tours in Spain, and I am working towards opening other destinations so that people can come with me, because as a cultural historian, and I feel very much you follow me in this way, when your passion is culture and art and whatnot, it's very hard to just look at one place, because everything connects, everything links together. So you're always thinking, oh, what about that and that and that and that? So I think perhaps that's where it comes from. You couldn't probably be a trekking guide in all of the mountains across the world, because they are all very different. It's very hard to link. Sure, they're mountains, but it's not the same going up K2 than Kilimanjaro than Mount Everest. Completely different beasts. So I think, when you really talk about the culture and things like that, because they're very relatable human elements, and people are people no matter where you go, there is always that degree of familiarity, that degree of the different and the not so different, that is really, it's just really fascinating.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. I'm totally the same. I feel you on this level very much. It's the same with me. It's just, being an art historian, it's just these little connections and then the bigger connections. And it's like, oh, I haven't seen this before. Oh my God, it just clicks in your mind. And then you can present it to the guests. I love those little moments. That's one of the most important thing that really fulfills me in the tour. You know, it's like, you know what, we are in Morocco, but you know, Spain is not far away. So you know, the culture there. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I mean this. Yeah, I could go on and on about this because I genuinely feel so much about it. Like even just now, I was in Prague and I was doing some scouting there. It was partially pleasure, partially what's happening here. And you know, I just didn't realize how many connections there were with even Spanish history, because I think we tend to forget in Spain that the Habsburg Empire was huge, and Prague was its capital even for a little while. And you know, the Habsburg emperors had their hands in the Czech Republic for a really long time, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these things are so familiar, like even just foods or ways of being, just stuff like that. It was just fascinating. So it's really great, like you said, when you get a group of people and you're somewhere and can establish a connection somewhere else, it's like magic to me
Mm-hmm.
it's magic,
Mm-hmm.
for
To
sure.
me also, and I really think that a lot of people in groups or our guests, they really appreciate that. Because you know, I believe that it will be more and more easy to get only the data, the information on the places, but what we can contribute to the world, as far as I'm concerned, is exactly these connections that are born out of our work and expertise, and this full-heartedness that we can pass on, the passion that we have for the places. That's how I feel about guiding. I'm not actually a very typical tour guide at all. I'm more like a cultural, however, ambassador you want to call it. Yeah, but really, I've never been good in, you know, somebody asking me, tell me the three places where I can eat this and this in Havana, and I'll be like, oh, can you give me 1 hour? I'll think about it, you know, because there are so many places I love. So I'm not this kind of person, but I'm so desperately in love with these connections and the culture and the symbolism and what people actually bring to the tour also themselves and how we communicate about that. It's amazing. It's just wow.
Yeah, no, and again, I'm so glad you've said that about, you know, that's something that happens so often when you're a tour guide and people go like, oh, you should be able to tell me the best something or another, and you're like, it's, that's not all a tour guide is or all a tour guide does. Like, sure, there is an element to that, and obviously in your tours, because there is a boutique element, you need to choose accommodations and whatnot, and you have
Mhm.
a certain standard to fulfill. But it, it always puzzles me when people just think like, oh, you must know this place, every single corner of this place, like the back of your
Mhm.
hand. What's the most obscure shop to buy, I don't know, second-hand
Cigars.
clothes in the city? Yeah, and you're like, I don't know. So it's good that people understand these things about us, because you know we know a lot. We know a lot of stuff, but there is a limit to what we know about, and I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about what tour guiding is. The tour guiding is just knowing this place, that place, and you know, moving on, see pretty things. Is we do, or at least those of us who work with the historical and cultural side of things, it's a lot more than that. It's about helping you connect with that place and
Mhm.
understand that place, for your sake. You know, we know it already.
Exactly.
So it is great when people, you know, when people's gears suddenly click and they are like, I get it. That's really what makes these things fascinating. Now,
I
I'm
see we
sure
are
that
the
you have,
same in that. Yeah, I also feel totally the same. It's like this aha moment. This is
yes.
why, you know, and I'm like, yes, this is why. That's why, you know, and to bring this knowledge. And for me personally, this also opens up the horizons of the people, obviously, and brings somehow, you know, this little contribution to a better world in my heart. That we understand each other better, or we get some new knowledge from other cultures that it can contribute to our home living and who we actually are. This for me is so important.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, it is funny because I've in other professions, you sort of always stay away from people that do the same thing than you. But I find that tour guides sort of gravitate towards each other in the sense of like, if I go traveling somewhere and it's not a place that I know, I want a tour guide to tell me about it. And people
Mm-hmm.
always are like, oh, but you're a tour guide yourself. Surely you should be able to do that. It's like, yes, but no, because that person has done that in that place longer than me, and it's going to have a specific perspective that's going to help me then understand these things. So and you just learn so much from other people's styles, other people guiding experiences. It was really interesting. When I was in Prague, we had two different tour guides,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them, she was clearly very new. I could tell she had probably just been doing this for a couple of months, and I was like, I feel so sorry for you, because she had a group of very nasty people. Like, we were perhaps the only people who were actively, listening and whatnot. Everyone else was sort of just like, whatever. And with the face masks and everything else, sometimes it's hard to hear. So it, she was genuinely struggling, and was like, this is such a shame. But it was nice, because then she asked something, and I sort of replied, and she was like, oh, how do you know that? And I was like, well, I'm a tour guide. And she was like, oh, awesome. And we got talking about that. And there was like this little secret connection, if you see what I
Uh-huh.
mean.
Uh-huh.
So it is great, when we can all come together and pitch in that way, and sort of create communities like that. The
Mm-hmm.
travelers, I think, know that as well. And they then will go and say, no, have a tour guide, do this, do that. But I know you've been on tour recently, and you've had many groups recently as well. So I am always wondering, what is like a very nice memory, like one of your fondest memories from one of the tours, that every day, perhaps when you're having a really hard day, like this poor girl was having in Prague, you sort of think about it, and it just makes things better. Do you have one of those?
Well, not in this specific way that you put it now. When I have a really bad day on a tour, usually I try to find resources within me, not the memories, but I try to fill myself up energetically somehow. Of course, that's one of the things, a challenging job, right? It's physically very demanding and challenging to be walking for 14 hours sometimes per day, organizing things, even then still being present enough in your head with all the content we need to pass on and we love to share. So for me, this physical aspect is quite demanding. That's why with Elegant Cultural Tours, we try not to pack up the program 12 hours per day. No way. Just to leave some space also for the people to feel where we are. But one of those memories actually, that there was this time in Cuba once we visited a school, which was so beautifully done because it I had the feeling that everyone involved, we were really giving our best. The local guide, he was with us, then the teacher in the school, the students, the small kids. It was a primary school somewhere in the mountains above Trinidad, and also the group, because the one thing is trying to bring these experiences. You never know how it's going to work because there's so many people involved and so many things can happen. So
So
we
many.
also go with the flow, and I'm like, okay, I have this knowledge of 20 years, we'll manage somehow. Whatever happens, we'll manage. But in a way, everything was really going very smoothly, but totally not in the way I imagined it to be. And at the end, we were like standing there with these children in front of us, asking them to sing their national anthem for us, and they stood up and they were singing. It was 7 of them only in a classroom. And then I said, okay, well, now we have to give them something back. That time it was a Slovenian group, so we also sang our own national anthem. And in this way, really, I still have goosebumps when I remember this situation, because it was like a real exchange that happened, heart to heart, not through, the whole ocean is between us, the Europe and Cuba, and a whole decades of living, but it just brought us together as humans, and I love that moment. I was
That
crying a
sounds,
bit. I tried not to show it, but I was like, okay, let's go, guys.
that sounds, I mean, just thinking about it, like, that's like a one in a lifetime kind of experience. You're never gonna do that again. And even if you do, it will not be the same, because it will be different people, different everything. That, wow, I'm really envious of you now, because that probably is gonna
Mm,
stay there with you forever, and with them, right? Like, I can't
yes.
imagine what I would be like if I would be like, I just came back from wherever, and this happened. Like you don't forget that type of stuff. That's magic. That's the magic. That's
Exactly.
the magic.
Yeah, that's one of these, the aha moments, and the second one is this meaningful relationships. Even so short, it was just half an hour, but it just opened something within me, within the local guide. I think also the children. The idea was actually to bring them presents, which we many times do in Cuba, for the children for the school, but then it just just giving them the presents and say goodbye. It felt like so no go. And so we entered and we just showed them on the map of the world where we come from, and they told us a few facts about Cuba. I mean, just, having a conversation,
Yeah.
basically. It's beautiful.
No, and that word always sticks with me. It's conversation. Half of the job of a tour guide is just having a continuous conversation with people. Not just from the point of view of imparting knowledge, but really bonding with people. Like there is a difference between explaining something and conversing, right? And I think when you manage to get to that stage of having just an open conversation with your tour, it becomes a different thing. And sometimes it takes less time, sometimes it takes more time, right? Not everyone opens up at the same time. Some people take a while, but when you get to that stage, I always find as well that my job becomes so much easier because you are then talking from person to person, from human to human. And like you said, it's so important to understand those people and feel their identities, their connections, whatever it may be, because it really helps you, then make them more interested and you interested back. So yeah, those conversations are super important, and particularly when you have them in a foreign country with completely different people, they are, I genuinely think they are like that little opening into a whole new world that changes people's lives. It genuinely does.
And
I'm
as
not.
you said, it doesn't always happen. It just
Yeah.
doesn't come. I remember, you probably do too, when we started guiding, right? I remember myself, for the first 3 years of this job, I was most of the time occupied by the topics I need to pass on, maybe the first year or two, but still for a very long time. Then secondly, because I've always been a leader of very long trips. It's not only 1 hour in Ljubljana, but I do it a week or more, 2 weeks. And so I've always been really concentrated on what I need to tell them, prepare your passports, be careful about this and this and this. And it took me such a long time to finally be able to let go, to have this as an automatic, system that runs within, and it comes automatically before we come into the hotel or at the first hour of the tour, all these warnings and so on. And then to be able to also switch off the guide role and just be a human and just say, okay, tell me, what do you feel? How do you see this? I really want to know what happens with you when we're here.
Yeah, no, for me, it was interesting because my first job as a tour guide was in a specific site. So I always thought people just wanted to know about the facts. People just wanted to know this, know that, blah, 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 blah. And you were just part of the machinery, if you like. And there was one day when I was still in training, my tutor, my mentor, just was ill. So I had to do it all on my own. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And because I obviously had to cover for two people, if you see what I mean, I just couldn't be part of the machinery. I just had to sort of be myself and be honest and be like, well, and this and that. And then I realized that people actually like that. People actually wanted to, sure, get the information, but have that moment with another person and understand why this is relevant. Not just because someone is telling you, but because you are establishing those connections. And I think it was kind of like a serendipity, because I came out that day like almost like I can't explain it. I was just like, what did just happen? and
Oh.
and it made sense, it made sense. So after that, even though I was still learning the ropes and everything, I sort of tried to have that moment with people. I forced myself to sort of engage rather than just talk, and it becomes a completely different experience. But a lot of people, like you said, particularly at the beginning when you don't know exactly how you fit in this world, it's hard to know when to do one thing or when to do the other one. So yeah, and I think there is also a risk with some tour guides who take it a step too far, and it
Exactly.
almost it almost is like you are acting as a friend of the group. And sure, we all want to be friendly and amicable and whatnot, but there is a difference. You still need to be professional. You still need to have a certain boundary, and it's not an easy line to draw for
No,
sure.
I'm really happy you said this because yeah, but we know there are many people in this world and also in this profession. It's like all other professions, right? There are good ones, da da da. But it's so true in my opinion also, you know, the fact that these thin lines, where is the line, you know? I personally discovered that the line is where I don't feel good anymore, but for this I have to be really connected to myself,
Yes.
which not a lot of people can do in front of the group, to be connected to how you actually feel, to how you perceive them. And also at the same time, that's how I noticed it, at the same time feel how the group is feeling, plus how I'm feeling, and which feelings are mine and which are theirs. I mean, obviously not always it works because sometimes you're biased with this and that, but at least to try to distinguish this, I think for this you really need many kilometers to be able to switch off when you need, and just switch on to the group and then switch off back to yourself. For me, that's how I feel it from the inside. And when I don't feel good anymore, I just go strictly back to the professional part of myself and establish again the, I call it technical part of guiding, which means information, instructions, da da da. And then when I feel okay, so it's very subjective in a way, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's a very good point. Like, and I love the fact that you said it's my feelings and their feelings, because sometimes when you are taking care of people, at the end of the day, we are caring for those people at that particular moment in time. You kind of absorb their emotions, right? And I've had this so many times. You may be having a great day, then suddenly a group of people who have had an awful flight or an awful cruise journey, which unfortunately I've had many of them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They come, they come all bottled up and restrained and whatever, and it, you take upon that, and it's difficult to know, where that line is. But like you said, you need to have a very high emotional intelligence, and you need to be very self-aware, which certainly is not something that most tour guiding courses or accreditations do. They don't teach you that. So you really need to find it within yourself. And I don't think that's something we speak about enough. When we talk about skills and things like that, the tour guides need to have, there are some things you can't teach. Either you have them or you don't have them. That's simple as that. Unfortunately, in the same way that I'm never gonna be able to be like Usain Bolt and run 100 meters on a sprint. Some people may not be able to do that, like you suggest. And I think that's for a lot of guides sometimes that's very, very hard. And for a lot of people that come into the groups as well, to sort of realize that just because your tour guide is friendly doesn't mean that they are your best friend, and you can just hang out
Yeah,
with them.
and all the things that come with it, crossing the lines. For example, also what I see with younger guides happening so much is that they allow the people to cross their lines, and then you become like a was that an English word? Servile? Well, it's not
Yeah.
probably, but giving out everything you have, and then in half of the tour, long tours are specifically demanding in energy saving because at the middle of the tour you're there with no more energy and nothing to recharge, no means of helping yourself, and that's really really not a good situation to be in. So I think you're right, some of the things should be probably taught for to the guides, but others are something. For example, for me, the constant learning is a necessity if you're a guide. Also having a charisma, which can be taught a bit, but it comes from your own personality. And at the end of the day, in long tours, I think people come because of your personality. It is the knowledge, it is all the things that if these are missing, you're getting like 90% of the people are unhappy if you don't have the knowledge. But if you're a bad person, you can have all the knowledge. The tour, in my opinion and experience, will not go through as something wow, you know, it will not.
For sure. No, and you know, I'm so glad you also mentioned that, because I often refer to certain tour guides as cookie cutter tour guides.
What's
You know,
that?
like when you're doing cookies, when you're doing biscuits, and you're using like shapes to put them in the oven so that every single biscuit is the same. And I think a lot of tour guides try to be that way, you know, be like a copy of someone else, and that can happen. We are completely different individuals. You have to find your own voice, your own style, your everything, because otherwise you're just, you know, you're just a machine. Wikipedia could be doing your job otherwise. You know? Maybe not Wikipedia, but you know what I mean. It's people are going, like you said, particularly for a long tour. If people don't connect with you, if people don't get along with your personality, imagine, like you said, you know, being in Cuba for like however many weeks in that situation. That must be horrible for you and for the tourists if you don't have that information, that
well,
connection.
especially Cuba. You just pointed
especially,
out.
especially, yeah. It's
the most not really problematic, but the most demanding of all the destinations I've ever been to, in my opinion, is Cuba. Because so many things are random, you know, and so many things can change on the site. They're really this connection, or in a way, I was thinking when you were saying that now, in a way, I think the people, the group, the guests, somehow need to recognize you as a natural leader. Not without this, I don't like the word ego at all, but it maybe describes it good. Without this, you know, I was given the position to have a microphone in my hand, which after 15 years is nothing special anymore. It's just a microphone. But in a way, somehow, yeah, it helps that they recognize you as somebody who knows psychology also, who understands, who is open enough to take everybody in their arms, which doesn't mean that we love everybody, because it doesn't exist, right? But we can give the best of us even to the people that don't really adore us, which happens sometimes.
Yeah, you know, it is like that. And that position of the leader, it's again, it's another very crucial thing. And it takes me back to something you said a few moments ago about, you know, maybe younger guys who don't know how to set up those boundaries. I think it's because they don't understand that they are in a lead position. They are leading people. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, when you're guiding someone, you are putting yourself in that position of, I am sort of in front of you, telling you where to go, what to do, what steps to take. It is actually a position of responsibility, no matter where you are. Or what type of guiding you're doing. And I think a lot of people struggle with that mentality because they have this romanticized idea, right? That is just seeing things, talking about things, having fun. And it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. And not everyone can take it because of that, because they don't recognize they need to lead and they need to set the barriers of this is okay, this is not okay. And there you go. Because otherwise, if something happens like an emergency and you're hopeless, like you are hopeless, you're not going to be able to deal with that. And it's not something I think a lot of people realize that it needs doing from a tour guide. That's why we do risk assessments. That's why we got 1,000 things with us, just in case something happens, because you need to be that person that takes responsibility. That's why we also have insurance, right? Like a lot of people think it's just having your badge and there you go, but you need to have paperwork. You need to have things in there in place in case stuff happens, which, well, then again, not everyone does, but it's how it should be.
Yeah, true. I mean, there are so many layers, right, to being a guide. It's just the first one is always this, you know, people always ask me, no, they always say, oh, you know, your job, we love your job, you're always on holiday. And I always say, yes, but I'm never on my own holiday, you know. So they always see this traveling and being fluid, you go from one part of the world to the other. No, okay, which is also a reality, of course.
Yeah, sure.
But then you have the technical part, which is taught in the school, not just the content, the topics, but also this, what you're responsible for and what you're not. But then you can go as deep as you can, I feel. you can go all the way deep into even your personality, as we mentioned, into your heart, into your own resolving of your own emotions which show up. It's just so many things that even with only a little one going off-road, it won't be the same tour anymore.
For sure, for sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It can be one of those things that just throws everything off the rails altogether. And yes, it's.
And even, let's be honest, sometimes even to us being in this business forever, it happens. We are humans. It can happen, whatever. I mean, I even have been ill many times on a tour because I just was guiding and I got ill. So what else can you do? I was walking around with a twisted ankle. It wasn't very pleasant, but I did try to, do it in a very graceful way, if you can say that. It happens, right? We are not 300%,
No.
and nobody should be forced to be anyway.
No.
Or you have a bad day, like you said before.
Yeah,
you have a bad day and nothing helps. I have my tea in the morning. It's a perfect tea, but still it doesn't help me. So I'm like, okay, today will be hard. Let's work on myself first. Let's try not to bring this into a group, Yeah. It's my feelings. This is who I am today,
For sure. No, it is like that. And this is the reason why I love bringing you guys here and talking about it, because I've received messages already from a bunch of people being like, oh my God, it's so insightful. I didn't realize so much stuff went into it. And I mean, it happens with every job, right? That's why you have those type of memes with the what society thinks I do, what I think I do, what I actually do. It's 100% that way. But I think particularly with tour guiding, and not just tour guiding, I think particularly in your case when you're also managing the entire experience for a long period of time, it's like juggling everything. I think we had this similar situation with Ahmed last week, where in Morocco, because of how tourism works specifically, the tour guide is tour guide, driver, assistant, ambassador, everything in one go. And it's like, that's, it's a lot for one person to take in. So, it's a lot. Now,
I agree.
I'm getting self-conscious of the time, so I'm gonna ask you the last question that I said I was gonna ask, just because we're almost at 40 minutes, which is probably a bit too long. But anyway, as we have already spoken of a few things in here, but I always try to include a question that helps potential tour guides or just people thinking about the profession or in tourism in general about some things to consider. So I wanted to ask you, if there was something specific that you wished you would have known in advance before you worked in tourism, typical moment when you thought, oh, I had these expectations and the reality was completely different, or something that maybe it wouldn't have put you off from working on tourism, but it would have, I don't know, mentally prepared you better or encouraged you to pursue things in a specific way. Because I think a lot of, I know I had certain preconceptions which didn't turn out to be that way, not in a bad way, like actually in a very positive way, and they actually made me realize this is what I actually wanted to do with my life. But you don't always know, and I think if a lot of people knew that beforehand, maybe they would be more inclined to do it or less inclined to do it. So if you have any views on that front.
Yeah, there's one which I think is really interesting, the fact that I actually was a very, very shy person. And that before starting to work in tourism, I was terrified of speaking in front of a group of people.
Oh my God.
Was like, no way, totally introverted. I still am in certain ways. And I feel that this has become my superpower now, because I can really feel with the guests who come and they're very introverted. I'm like, I'm giving you all the space. You don't need to communicate more than necessary. Enjoy in your own way. So I'm both. I'm extroverted and introverted. So for me, this was really a breakthrough. I had to work on it a lot. Once I started talking, I was fine. But before, I still, even now, I still have this 10 minutes before I meet the group. I'm like, oh my God, I just want to escape somewhere. But then it goes well. So for me, this one, but the most challenging for my constitution and my body is the physical challenge. I didn't expect it to be so demanding in ways of, jet lags. I'm still on a jet lag after my last tour. in ways of changing the food, changing the hotels every day. That's also one of the reasons why I try to make the tour so that we stay many nights in the same place. I think it's friendly to all of us, also to the guests, much better. So this one, the demanding one, and the third one, we don't talk many times about loneliness in our profession, which I never expected to have it. But I'm an introvert, so I'm totally fine alone also. But I can really feel how a lot of guides go off stream. They either start whatever other things, drinking, whatever else, like lots of different people, lots of different problems. But it's because of this loneliness. You're always alone. You're always with people, but when you have to decide important things, you have nobody to ask. When you're there, they're having a romantic time in the desert under the stars with candles, and I'm like, oh, you guys, you look so beautiful, but I'm sitting there alone. And that's one of the things, it's a very lonely profession, in my opinion. You have to be able to sustain in this way.
You've hit something there in the nail with that last one, which, I mean, the physical aspect as well. I'm quite short and small, so
lots of energy.
I've always been quite sort of. I've always liked moving around. I've always been sort of, very much high energy. But I think a lot of people don't realize that it's not just the walking; it's the fact that you're walking and talking, and all of that drains you completely, and you're thinking, and not just because you're thinking, but because you have to be aware of absolutely everything. It's a super exhausting job. So,
and then the weather conditions, it's raining, it's cold, it's freezing, it's too hot, you're dying, you don't drink enough, you don't go to toilet when you need it.
Exactly. These things that you can't control, they generally take a toll on your body, on your mind. And the issue is, at least for someone like me, that particularly if you're going from one place to another, if you don't get a good night's sleep, if you don't rest enough, if the journey on the bus or the car takes forever, you know what I mean? Something like that. It accumulates really quickly. So it can be, I unfortunately know a lot of tour guides that suffer from burnout pretty badly. And they need to space their tours quite a lot, which, can be quite challenging in some cases, particularly, well, with the situation that we now have in the world, because, well, it makes a hard living. But this thing about the loneliness, it is so underrated. Like, I don't think, like you said, people don't mention it, people don't talk about it. And I think it varies in what type of tour guiding you are. Like, when I was in specific sites, just working in specific sites as a tour guide, it was different because you're a team of tour guides, right?
And it's more like a job, right?
Exactly. So you have that sort of dynamic of, I am doing this tour and maybe I feel weird, but I know someone else is there. Fine. When you're working for like a big agency, maybe, or if you're hired by a specific agency that has like a lot of support and stuff like that, that's great. But let's face it, there's not many of those out there for starters. And particularly when you're doing things like walking tours or long tours, something like that, it's just you. That's it. And that's when things can get really, like you said, like, oh, my guests are having a fantastic time, and I am here watching them have a fantastic time. Because even though you may be experiencing some of that, like you said, amazing romantic time in the desert, fantastic, you're not just experiencing it, you're doing all of those other things I've just said a moment ago. You're making sure that they're having a great time and nothing bad happens to them, because I am looking out for them. So it is like that. And I find often, I don't know if you have the same feeling, but often if I've had a particularly long day, or there's been, it's been busy for good or bad, whatever, I get back to my room, home, whatever, and I just kind of just want to sit in silence with no one around me, just to recharge. And that can aggravate the loneliness, right? Because you need to care after yourself, and then you put your situation in a very tight box where the cycle keeps on repeating itself. So
for example, I have the problem with sleeping. I mean, not a problem, but I wake up in the night. I do fall asleep now. That's new. In the first years, I couldn't fall asleep because of the impressions and the things I need to do tomorrow. Now I do, but I wake up like 4 or 5 in the morning, and then I'm like going through the things. I do a lot of training on myself, so I stopped doing it. But still, I wake up, and even the fact that, you know, people sometimes, you know, when you walk around and you have a group behind you, and one of them comes and they want to chat, and it's such a lovely atmosphere, and you'd love to do it, but at the moment I have like 6 parallel planning to do in my mind. I'm not thinking only what I will say next, but where is the driver? Did the guide bring the water that he promised? Are we going to make it until the closing time? How about lunch? You know, it's not neurotic in my experience, but it's just a lot of thoughts and a lot of mental processes going on. And if your body doesn't feel optimum, it can be really hard. And then they would perceive you as a confused one, or you're forgetting about the birthday, or, you know, it's just that sometimes it's impossible, and you don't eat well, you don't sleep much. But yeah, I somehow, that's the answer to your question. If I'd known this before going into tourism, what's it that it's really different than I thought it would be, and probably that's one of the main ones.
Yeah, no, I'm honestly so glad you mentioned that, because I think it has a reality for a lot of people, and it is hard. And when it's a hard job and you are isolated, it's 3 times as hard. And isolation doesn't have to be, like you said, in a physical way, because you're surrounded by people, but it's on that, you know, compartmentalization of everything you have to do, where you just need to put barriers, and unfortunately they're there for a reason. So it is but yeah, this is not to put anyone off, it's just, you know, to give an honest.
It just comes with the job. You get used to it, but it's good to talk about it. I think it's not only flowers and big hearts. It's a lot of really demanding decisions, and sometimes you have to make a decision in a second, because the people are looking at you and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? You know, how are we going to do it? And you're like, okay, this is a decision. It's a very tough decision-making process, and I can't consult my driver or whoever I'm with, because it's a totally only my role there, and I'm standing in front of them and I'm like, look, we have to do this or this. That's why are we doing this? I can tell you later, guys, but at the moment I just feel it's the right decision, and then I start mentally process all the things going in the back of my mind. Of course, everything is not critical all the time, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah, for sure. But no, and you know, I really like what you've been saying this a lot today, and I'm very happy for that, because like you said, work on yourself, like particularly in this day and age, you know, guys, just practice some self-care, genuinely, like overall in life. But if you have a job like this, it's even more important, because there is nobody gonna be there for you to do it for you. So it's super important, you know.
Yeah, it's like the most demanding manager job, really. You're dealing with all these things that people have in their jobs when they're managers or CEOs of the company. You're leading 20 people in your company there on the side. Yeah, take the vitamins, drink enough water, you know, eat well, sleep a lot, take the time for yourself without feeling guilty that you're not with the group all the time, because nobody actually wants to have you 24 hours. It gets really boring.
Yes, exactly like that. No, that's great. So thank you for that. And I think we're coming now to the end of our hour. So we're going to wrap this up. So thank you so much for being here today again. Honestly, really appreciate it. Thank you everyone that has been commenting on the chat. I've seen a few of our colleagues and a few people dropping comments, and I've replied as quickly as I could. So thank you for that, guys. And yeah, that's unfortunately the end of today, but don't worry, I'm going to post this. So it's going to be there for everyone to see if you haven't catched it, or if you want to listen to this wisdom again, because, you know, there's 20 years of wisdom right here. I mean, look at her. Amazing stuff.
And you, how long have you been in tourism?
10 years, give or take. So
30 together.
30 years combined.
Oof.
30 years combined.
We're sure. Going to retirement soon, both of us.
If only.
Would be nice.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. If there is any last words that you want to say, please feel free to.
Well, I'd like to say just that tourism, I hope, is finally waking up now after a long sleep. Yeah, exactly. And I'd love people to know that we will do our best now, but there are things that have to go back into a normal. And in this way, to have a lot of love for for the whole tourism sector, as we all do. I mean, even us, we have to expect from our partners that we are slowly gonna go back and travel again soon. And we're looking forward to taking people around the world again, aren't we?
Yes, desperately so. It's
Yeah.
it is the most wonderful experience. So yes, the sooner that this can get going again, the better. But obviously, like you said, there are challenges and things that we need to revisit to keep people safe,
Mm,
mostly. Um,
exactly. Yeah.
so I hope that everyone that sees this and that hears this realizes that we're really doing this for your benefit, because we want you to have the best time, the best experience, because that's what makes us happy at the end of the day. That's what brings value in our lives. So
Exactly.
there you go. Thank you so, so much for this again. Thanks, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day to
Oh.
everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful time, and I'll see you very soon. And I'll talk to you very soon, too. Okay?
Thank you, Lily, so much for bringing me in. Take care.
No problem. Bye.